passengers using the South Eastern Rail network have suffered for too long from overcrowded and unreliable train services. My own journey to work today was sadly typical of what many of my constituents experience every week. The 6:59 a.m. service from Charlton to Charing Cross that I caught this morning was 6 minutes late, had 2 fewer carriages than were advertised, and was badly overcrowded as a result. And my argument this evening is a simple one. The residents that I represent in Blackheath, Greenwich, Charlton, Woolwich and Plumstead, and those across South East London represented by other members of this House, deserve better from the next franchise. And I'm concerned that the way the government have approached it may not deliver the improvements my constituents need. I'm happy to give way. I think it's fair to argue, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and the Minister may disagree, that the record of successive operators on the franchise since privatisation in 1996 has not been a particularly impressive one. That would certainly be the view of many of those I represent. When the Strategic Rail Authority took the decision in June 2003 to strip Connex South Eastern of its multi-billion pound franchise, it did so because of concerns about the company's financial performance. But anyone who used Connex services will recall just how dire their operational performance also was. Under South Eastern Trains, a subsidiary company of the SRA who took over and ran the franchise for 3 years, we did see a steady improvement. But the SRA only really adopted a care and maintenance approach pending the new franchise. Under the current operator, South Eastern, which is a subsidiary of Govia and has run the franchise since 2006, services on the network have all too often been less than satisfactory. Under the current system, the DfT is responsible for designing and procuring new and replacement services on the network, and they specify, often in minute detail, service levels, timetables, rolling stock and most fares. It's a one-size-fits-all approach to rail franchising, premised on franchises driven by the need to chase revenue and meet targets, rather than devolved concessions focused on reliability and investment. And the latter is what I believe would have been achieved by the devolution of South Eastern services to Transport for London. And frankly, while I'm still incensed by the Secretary of State's decision to torpedo plans to that effect, which were jointly published by the Department and TfL in January 2016, and which were endorsed by the Secretary of State's predecessor, the Right Honourable Member for West Derbyshire, and the then Mayor of London, the Right Honourable Member for Uxbridge and South Ruislip. As we know from a leaked letter, the Transport Secretary did so because of a dogmatic opposition to rail devolution, based on his belief that these services should be kept out of, and I quote, the clutches of a Labour mayor. No detailed explanation has ever been produced, as far as I'm aware, as to why the business case submitted by the Mayor of London was considered inadequate. And what particularly frustrates my constituents, whatever their political persuasion, is the knowledge that if a Conservative mayor had been elected in May 2016, they would now be looking forward to our local trains being integrated into TfL's successful overground networks next year. As expected, given the instant and I suspect coordinated opposition they generated from Conservative politicians across South East London and Kent, proposals for all metro services on the North Kent, Greenwich and Bexley-Heath lines to terminate at Cannon Street only have been dropped. But that doesn't mean that all services on these lines will escape cuts under the government's franchise specification. The requirements set out in the ITT include the introduction of a revised train service no later than 2022 that will see Woolwich and Charlton stations in my constituency lose direct services to Charing Cross, and Blackheath, along with other stations on the Bexley-Heath line, lose direct services to Victoria. And these revisions come on top of the proposed replacement of 2 of the 6 hourly off-peak South Eastern services on the line with Thameslink ones, which I fear may be slower, less reliable, and which will not stop at Woolwich Dockyard station in my constituency or the Erith and Belvedere stations in the constituency of my honourable friend, the member for Erith and Thamesmead. I'm happy to give way. Perhaps the most disappointing aspect of the new franchise specification is that none of the commendable aspirations set out in the joint plan published by the Department and TfL in January 2016 have been included. Can the Minister tell the House why options such as greater integration of fares and the staffing of stations from the first to the last train were ruled out, and whether, given the tangible benefits they bring, he will reconsider including them? To conclude, Mr Deputy Speaker, it's beyond doubt that passengers using the South Eastern Rail network have suffered from substandard services for far too long. All of us would agree, I hope, that they deserve better from the next franchise. But I have real concerns shared by passengers and the rail user groups in my constituency, that the way the government have approached the franchise, that is to be let later this year, will not deliver the level of service that passengers expect and deserve. We will all have to live for the best part of a decade, and perhaps even longer, with the franchise and the operator who secures the award later this year. It's crucial that we get it right. In responding, I'd like to ask the Minister to not only address some of the specific concerns that I've raised, but to go away and think again about some of the limitations of the franchise specification published by his department last year, and what might be done, even at this late stage, to address them. I fear that if he doesn't, Mr. Deputy Speaker, then we will all be back here next year, and potentially for many years after that, repeating concerns about services on this network on behalf of those we represent.
Well done.